This latest decommitment, it's a big deal for the Auburn Tigers.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It is a Recruiting Thursday. We're joined by Locked On Recruiting insider Brian Smith. He's also the recruiting writer at auburndaily.com. And our recruiting coverage here throughout the Locked On Podcast Network is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Brian, we had a similar conversation last week talking about a defensive lineman decommitting from Auburn, and we got news earlier this week. Kalen Edwards, he could have played either side of the ball, very talented, but no longer a part of Auburn's class.
It's hard to replace 6'3", 6'4", and over 300 pounds and moves well. Look, Auburn needs offensive line help. My first guess was that's where he'd play, but originally I thought he was going to be their nose guard. Either way, I'd be cool with it. What I'm not cool with is him not signing with Auburn because they need big bodies. We've talked about it for a long time. That has not changed, especially after what I saw at practice earlier this week. They need more size, especially on defense moving forward. So, yeah, it's a big deal. Doesn't mean there's not time to do something about it. But again, over 300 pounds and moves well, give me all you got.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the staff is going to stay on him, but what does this look like? Optics aren't everything, but they are a big deal. Perception is a big deal when it comes to recruiting because these kids see the same stuff and they get a little bit more information depending on their relationship with their staff and how they want to handle that. But it's still like optics and perception does matter. Not everything, but it does matter, Brian. So they lose out on Big Tony. We talked about him last week. And now they lose out on Kalen Edwards, who most people thought he was going to play defensive line at Auburn. But man, Auburn went from having an incredible defensive line class to now, I mean, they still got some guys committed, but that was going to kind of be your bread and butter, is beefing up the defensive front. They still can do it, but it just optically, this looks bad. What are your thoughts on that?
There are only so many guys that have that kind of girth, first off. So, like, it's one thing if, like last year, they needed receivers. And it was an incredible year in state. It all lined up, right?
Right.
Well, this year they need D linemen, and in state it's great. Plus they got Kalen, who's just north of Memphis. And you're thinking this is going to go great. Well, you lose one kid to your arch rival. Kalen decommits, and they're both big guys. The best interior players in the country. Tony was in state. Everybody else pretty much out of state. That's a true big dude. They're all edge guys like Zion they'll take, Jared they take, etc. He's the only interior guy on the state, not named Autry that they already have, that they probably really want. So now not only do you need guys, you got to get them out of state. That's hard. So it probably makes them frustrated. And like, it's not that I can just tell you before anybody asks, this staff gets after it on the recruiting trail. I have zero concern about this. Unfortunately, that's from a long-term perspective. Right now, it's very frustrating for me, just a guy covering it. I can only imagine a diehard fan because there's no quick answer.
Well, the perception, like, I mean, we talked about this earlier in the week. Charlie Five and I discussed, like, this doesn't feel good. Like, it feels like all the momentum of recruiting is gone. And the reception from the fan base, which I think is a very mature point of view, is, oh, it'll be fine. They'll work it out. They'll end up with a top 10 class. It's like, okay, great. Cool. I'm glad the belief is there in Freeze and staff, and they could totally get there, but this does make it more difficult.
If you look at college football over the last, well, really 50 years, but especially the last 5 to 10, the teams that are in the Final Four that are in contention and going into the last weekend are all teams that had elite high school defensive linemen sign. Guys we all knew, LSU, Bama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, they always sign the elite kids. It's a really short list. Auburn was starting to break into that. And if they're going to beat those teams, they need to break into it again. I don't care where the hell they're from. Texas, they could be from Florida, they could be from wherever. It's just usually easier when they're right down the road. So I need to see it now, but I know they're putting in effort. They need to stay after Kalen. They need to stay after Big Tony and just work the phones. I mean, there's nothing else you can do. There's no just go buy a defensive tackle at their local grocery store. So
sure, but I mean, they did do that last year, and a lot of these guys were later additions to the class.
That's why there's some hope.
Yeah, right.
100%.
Malik Blockton is right down the road in Montgomery, but they went to Arkansas to get TJ Lindsey. I know that he went to Bradenton to finish out his high school career at IMG, but Amaris Williams, I just that they were able to fill it out. It was later in the process for a lot of these guys. So you've got your core defensive linemen for the next 2 or 3 seasons, but you need to stack these classes together. And that's what so many Auburn fans are so hopeful about, is for the ability to finally have the opportunity to stack 2 really solid classes.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe 2.5, just because they finished, the Connor Liu and the Keldrick Falk class so well. So we'll say stack 2.5 classes together. And that opportunity is still there, but you went from having the best defensive line, being in position to have the best defensive line class in the country, to now you've got to refigure how you're going to do that.
It's only 1 or 2 players, but the number of guys that are like that is few, and everybody wants them.
Well, it hurts that they're in the same position group too, right? Like this would feel different if it was a D lineman and a tight end, or a D lineman and a receiver, but they're both defensive linemen.
What are the 3 most important positions in recruiting? Quarterback, defensive line, and corner. We all know if a guy's a 5-star, that's fine, but would you rather have the 5-star D tackle or offensive guard? You know what I mean? Like it's
every time. Yeah.
So that's what I mean. There are different values. You look at the draft, and also those 3 spots, it's just over and over again, and you throw an offensive tackle too. Those are the 4. So Auburn also needs offensive tackles. That's the other spot, and they've only got 1 lineman committed on that side of the ball now. But they're in on a gazillion guys. Right now is practice, like we were at practice this week. All these kids are walking around. Some are big guys and all that, and some are receivers, etc. They're doing the right things and getting the right kids on campus. Now you got to get those kids back for official visits. So, like Auburn's already done at tight end. I saw their 2 tight end commitments at practice. I'm like, that's how tight ends are supposed to look. Like they look the part 100%. They're getting better. It's just, I want to see the D tackle thing now work itself out. Because last year, they hit the inside straight because all their guys at D line down the stretch were out of state. That was incredible. Like Blockton was an earlier guy. Then they got all those guys out of state. They could not have done better. It's just hard to do that back-to-back years.
Yeah, and I think that's why Auburn fans have faith in the recruiting ability of the staff, is because they've done it. We've seen them do it. They did it in such a short amount of time. The previous class too, where they flipped all of those guys. Like Kayan was from Georgia, right?
Yeah, he's an Atlanta kid.
Yeah, Connor Liu is from where?
He's from Georgia, he's from outside Atlanta, but he's another Georgia kid.
Yeah, Keldrick's an in-state guy, but a lot of those flips that they had, were out of state. So we'll see exactly how all that breaks down over the next few months. But will be interesting to see how they adjust, because optically, like perception, it's not everything, but it is a lot, and they need a commitment. So who could that guy potentially be? You talked to a guy that I'm impressed with physically, and I think his high school tape, from what I've seen, is pretty noteworthy. We'll talk about him next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Nissan, they are bringing you March Madness bracket highlights. Each week, Nissan is picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys are able to take it to the next level. Like the Houston Cougars, they can only be described as a Nissan Armada. This top-seeded team is as hardcore as it gets out there, and it's no wonder they're expected to land a top seed in the tournament after their first season in the Big 12. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall. Alumni Hall is the best place to buy all of your Auburn swag, whether it's just Auburn University, whether it's Auburn football, basketball, baseball. It's a fun time of year, folks. It's a fun time of year. Make sure if you're going to an NCAA tournament watch party or an SEC tournament watch party, that you are the most hip person there, and Alumni Hall can help you be just that. They've got 3 great physical locations in Auburn, Opelika, and in Huntsville. You also can order all their stuff at alumnihall.com. An incredible selection online. It's 2024. Get with the program, people. Buy your Auburn stuff from Alumni Hall. Thank you so much to Alumni Hall for sponsoring this show. We're talking Cruton. Brian Smith hanging out with us. You talked to CJ Wiley, very long receiver. Your immediate thoughts when somebody mentions CJ Wiley?
He reminds me of Cam Coleman in terms of his frame, big-bodied kid, 6'4",
sold,
really long arms. Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm not saying he's as twitchy as Cam Coleman. Let's be fair. But he's recruited by everybody. He played on the 7A state champion in Georgia. He's battle-tested, plays with Cam Newton's 7-on team. He's an elite player. He had told me at the tournament I was at this past weekend that he was going to visit Auburn, and lo and behold, who walked in the door right when we were getting ready to go out to watch practice? Hey, CJ, how you doing? He walks in right when practice is starting, drove down. Very good sign. This is the history of recruiting repeating itself. Those that visit unofficially tend to come back again. Auburn is in the midst. He told me they were a contender. The visit confirms it. I'll take the actions over the words every single time. Mm-hmm. And this is a kid, like we talked about, stacking classes, D-line. They don't have to get 4 elite guys again. Like last year's receiver class for Auburn was off the charts. That's great.
Yeah,
not necessarily going to do that again. But you need at least one guy in that upper echelon. If it ends up being CJ Wiley, thumbs up. Because this is one of the better receivers in the country. And he could be your boundary guy playing opposite of one Mr. Coleman or opposite, however they line him up. And it's going to be hard. Somebody single covered. That's when you can really start just doing whatever you want and kind of just annihilating teams.
Did you ask him how big he was? Did you ask him what his
he's just under 200 pounds, and he's a legit 6'4". I mean, I've stood in front of he's a legit 6'4".
He walked past us yesterday. We were waiting to walk in. Yeah, I mean, he is a legit 6'4". He's huge. He's huge. So to me, I mean, I am really interested in the receiver situation because you're going to lose a few guys after this year, but you're going to kind of rely on that core 4 that are all going to be true freshmen. But there's room for CJ Wiley or a guy like him to come in and compete still as a true freshman. So that whoever they get, and I'm with you, I think they need probably 2 or 3 wide receivers just because I do think there's going to be some guys that leave. Could be wrong, but I just a hunch. And I think you need that. I think you need that. And also just culturally, I think Hugh Freeze is really still trying to rebuild that room. And you can't do that in just one recruiting cycle. So you need guys like CJ Wiley.
If they don't take at least one guy like him every year, it creates what happened last year. Like they didn't have a big body guy they could just throw it down the field to. They trusted. That's the other thing with CJ. He makes contested catches look easy. That's a God-given trait. Like he doesn't care about contact, doesn't care about going to the ground. You got to get guys like that. If you don't, you lose. So Auburn struggled against real corners last year in those battles. They won 20% of them instead of 50%. If that high. So this is the difference, man. It's recruiting. Wiley is an important get for the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, I think that's well said. All right, Broderick Scholl is visiting this weekend. One of the top players in Oklahoma, depending on which service you look at. What do you like about Broderick Scholl? He's 6'5", 275. I guess that's offensive tackle. Some places may see him as a guard, but he looks like an offensive tackle to me.
Well, he's a kid that's got the offers that you're looking for, and he's a kid that's like the pictures show it. I haven't seen him play, being where he's at. I mean, he's in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, but he's visiting all the right schools. He has the right offers, and he's also going to visit Auburn. What do we say every time I come on this show? What position do we say they always need somebody?
Offensive tackle.
Line. Yeah. And this is a kid that I don't care if he plays guard or tackle, Zach. They need both.
Good point.
You sign him, you bring him in, and then where he ends up is based on his performance. End of story. So they need 4 linemen in this class, at least. I would take 5 if at all possible from the high school ranks. If you're getting him on campus, just like I said with CJ, it's a good sign. The kids that visit unofficially tend to come back for the official visit season. let's see how
Especially
it
with
goes.
him coming that far away. That
That's
means
the other
something.
thing. Like I wonder if he's got a family member. Because that's random. Like when was the last time they consistently recruited the state of Oklahoma? Maybe there's like one kid or something. Like I highly doubt there's very many. So that's a good sign.
Outside of tight end, I don't know, but tight ends, they've for some reason gotten tight ends from Oklahoma, which is odd. No, Nebraska. Just kidding. But that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Like that's just not a state where you're like, oh, well, we're going to get that guy. No. So him visiting is a very good sign. Hopefully they can get a few more out-of-state offensive tackles like that to come visit.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All right. I want to get your thoughts on another offensive lineman situation. I don't really understand why he hasn't committed yet. Maybe you've got some thoughts. We'll discuss that. And also, you were at practice earlier this week. What'd you think of the team? All that coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV to provide access to millions of movies, TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes us here at Locked On. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy? It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. Look, if you like spending a ton of money on a part that may not fit your car, go elsewhere. But if you want to spend an appropriate amount of money, less money for a car that is guaranteed, for a part that is guaranteed to fit your car, head over to ebaymotors.com. They've got eBay Guaranteed Fit, which means your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or you get your money back. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, head over to ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Brian Smith, our guest, as we continue talking a little recruiting. Talk to me about Tovarus Dice, because I kind of thought he's been on commit watch for a hot minute. I think you were of that mindset too. Where are we with this? And once again, this is an offensive lineman from Langston Hughes over in Georgia.
Big time athlete, 6'5", 293. He's been to Auburn probably 5 times. And he finally ventured out and he visited Florida State with some of his family. Heard he had a great visit. And I think that's kind of confused him a little bit. Like, oh, there are other schools. Auburn had done the best job by a landslide up until that point of getting him on campus, obviously. If everybody else got like one visit and you've got a bunch. But now the question is, does he roll into a situation where he takes all his visits this summer, et cetera? That visit to FSU just took place. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out. But now I went from, I'm like 90% sure he's going to go to Auburn to it's like a 50-50 deal. So, I mean, that's just recruiting. And you got to expect somebody's going to make a run at him at some point that catches his attention. But now it's about the action speaking louder than the words. Who does he take his OBs to, and when are they? I mean, Auburn obviously can sell playing time on the offensive line. I don't think that's really a rough sell. They need at least 2 tackles, if not 3 in this class. So that's easy, but they got to get him back to like get the Auburn vibe going again and then get an OB. So I'm a little concerned right there. Sure.
All right. So you were out there among all of the media watching practice earlier this week. Let's go one positive, one negative. Let's start with the most positive thing that you saw from earlier this week.
The other viewing that we had, it was the first practice or whatever. And I knew it was going to be a little dicey with the passing game, but you and I were sitting there just like anybody else. Well, how do the quarterbacks look? How do the receivers look? Well, that spot is really hard to do quick chemistry. So there were some good and bad moments. I could see I know it's goofy, but in just over a week, it's like, okay, this looks a lot better.
Sure.
That surprised the hell out of me, to be honest with you.
I agree with you, though. Yeah, it did look
better. It's just like there were some balls that were dropped or weren't perfect or whatever, but like we're in early spring practice, and they have multiple guys that like on a 3rd and 7, throwing a 7 route on a corner. That's not an easy deal. And they're putting the ball where it's supposed to be and giving the guy a chance. It's all you can ask in freaking early March. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So compared to like, I still remember looking up at the scoreboard and seeing 20 yards passing at halftime at the Bama game. Like that is a fact. That's not going to happen again. That's the first thing, and that's positive. The second, by the way, just as a bonus.
Sure.
Cam Coleman is all that, and all the accolades aren't enough.
Yeah.
Like
it's just different, man. It's
I can't
just
explain
different.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, like I know him, I'm biased, but like when he runs, it looks like a thoroughbred. Like his stride is just like, there's one Randy Moss, I get it, and there's only so many guys even close, but he's got a chance to be on that next year. Like Randy Moss, whole different stratosphere from anybody I've ever seen, but he's the next tier. He can be as good as he wants. He can be a first-team All-American and go to the league after 3 years, be a top 10 pick. He is all of that.
Yeah, he could be. He could be. So we'll see what happens with Cam Coleman. I'm excited to watch him. Give me what's a negative that stood out to you? I got a feeling I know what you're going to say.
You do. Look, I just happened to focus because I didn't watch it the first practice. I went over to the D-line, love the younger players and all that, but like with the things they're doing and they have to, like just the basic techniques of like how you look inside, you hold your gap and all, it reminded more of like an elite level high school programs practice than a SEC program. They have so many guys in the early 3 deep that are freshmen and sophomores that it's more just basic teaching than like we're getting ready to go play UGA.
Yeah.
And like we both know Auburn's schedule is not a friendly one. Mm-hmm. I'm very concerned about next year, like especially the back half of the season. The SEC's a grind anyway. If they have any injuries at all up front, they're in trouble. They're in a lot of trouble. You can't have freshmen like playing 30-plus snaps on the D-line in a game. It just and I just don't think they have a showstopper up front at D-tackle at all. And they're going to be rotating guys inside and stuff. I think there's a recipe for a couple of butt whoopings here. And that's just where they are. They've recruited well, but they're not going to be immediate. Like Cam could do something different at receiver. It's just physically, you don't have to be as powerful. D-line, man, that's grown man strength. I'm very concerned about Auburn's defensive front.
Yeah, Daryl and I talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show. You got to think they're not done in the portal. You got to think they're going to. They've got to go out and get somebody else. They've got to go out and get somebody else. What they have right now, I don't think is enough.
What is there, 15 SEC teams, whatever it is? If we had not that this is realistic, but
16 now with Texas and Oklahoma.
Oh, okay, 60. They would be bottom 4 of the league at D-tackle. No question in my mind.
Sure. Yeah, that's probably true.
And that's not going to get it done. So look, if you want to compete against Georgia, Bama, LSU, your prime rivals, that can't be the case. So they got to figure that out, even if it's one guy. I know it sounds kind of goofy, but if it's just a good rotational player, all in, bro, because you got to have more snaps going to guys that aren't freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or whatever. They're going to hit a wall like pretty much all of them do. Games 9 through 12 could go very badly. That's my big concern. But if they can get a guy, especially they got a really good player, who could change your defensive front completely. Because I think like number 35 is a dude.
Well, like, I was about to bring him up, Jalen McLeod.
Oh gosh, yes, I love him.
You know, the starting buck, and he was made available to media. Yeah, I don't know why I can't say this. We were able to talk to him yesterday at his press conference, and he's all about like, I'm here for another season to get ready for the NFL. It's like, sweet, great,
100%.
Yeah, and as a pass rusher, if you can rush the passer in the SEC, the NFL will want you 9 times out of 10. So I'm with you. And he made some plays against the offensive line. He tackled Jeremiah Cobb in the backfield when they were doing some kind of pace stuff and some things that we were able to see. And so I'm with you. I think 35, Jalen McLeod, is extremely important. I'm almost concerned, Brian, with how important Jalen McLeod is to this team, because
that's exactly right.
He got hurt, at the start of the season last year, I guess going into the season, last fall camp, there was kind of some ankle stuff, and he didn't really get fully healthy until the second half of the season. That can't happen again. Like, he can't miss time with the way this defense is currently set up. If he misses any time, that is a major problem.
Here's the thing. It's unfortunate, but teams are going to set their protection to him. Okay, that's unfortunate. What happens if Jalen's standing next to you in just a jumpsuit because he can't play? The offense can do whatever the hell it wants. Who's the pass rusher? They don't have that guy like that. I'm not trying to be mean.
I hope it's Keldrick Falk.
I think he'll be pretty good at it, but he's not the same kind of player. He's not built the same. He's not a pure weak side edge. He's a strong side edge. Good player, but he's not a pure pass rusher either. And I don't think you're going to be worried about putting two guys on him. Number 35, they're at least going to consider chipping him or running away from him, do whatever. He got a scheme against him. If he's on the sideline and you combine that with the concern at D tackle, there are going to be a lot of second down and fours for teams on the other side of the line of scrimmage. That can't happen.
Right. Yeah, Jalen McLeod is infinitely important to this team. No question. No question about it. Brian Smith, how can people check out everything that you have going on right now?
AuburnDaily.com. We've got some stuff with the coaches up right now. Got some stuff with the players. A lot of kind of overall look at the team. It's changed my opinions being at practice and everything, and I know it has you as well. Yeah. And then there's a lot of recruiting stuff. Auburn should have a bunch of visits coming up because of all these unofficials they've had. The officials should start being announced over the next couple of weeks. Vital time for the Auburn Tigers and recruiting.
No question. No question. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.